Gianni. I am the director of gift planning and the director of the McAllen Society, which is our legacy society for St. John's University. And I hope everybody is staying warm. I think this is such a great discussion on such a beautiful snowy day. So I hope you enjoy this afternoon's. Uh, and also, the month of February, we have two special celebrations. We have Black History Month, and we have St. Valentine's Day, which is love. So it's always a wonderful time to celebrate love. And I thought it was very fitting. I purposely scheduled this power hour for this month because I think this discussion really demonstrates both of these celebrations so beautifully. It is, I felt like I was just saying to Edward, just a very heartwarming and inspiring story. And I was really excited to share it with you. It, like I said, it talks of the heart and it's very inspirational. So I have here to tell us all about this wonderful story is Anton Evangelista. He is award-winning filmmaker. This documentary, this film, was a winner as best film in by one of Hollywood director for the Film Forum Grant Program in association with the National Italian American Foundation and Italian Sons and Daughters of America. And it's called Il Signor Jackson. And the star of the documentary, which is fantastic, we even have the star of the show, is the wonderful Professor Edward Jackson. I'd like to say Action Jackson, because you'll see he's one of action for sure. And he's been a longtime educator in the New York public school system. I don't want to give anything else out about him because you'll learn about it. Now, if you registered and maybe registered last minute, you might not have gotten a chance to see the documentary. I strongly encourage you to see it, obviously. And we will be sending a follow-up email and you'll get to have the link to the documentary. When you registered, we provided the link. So hopefully many of you have seen it and you'll probably appreciate some of the stories that Anton and Edward are going to share with you. So without taking any more time away from Anton and Edward, I'm going to turn it over to Anton Evangelista and we can begin. Anton, we just have to unmute your microphone. Thank you so much.
Sue, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I guess I can be heard. First of all, I want to thank everyone who joined us today for the Power Hour, all the participants. I know we have a major snowstorm, so I appreciate everyone showing up today. I know I speak for Ed when we are thrilled to be a part of this Power Hour and allowing us to share our story, Ed's story, the film that I made on Ed Jackson. Just to give you a little background on how this whole project came to be, I was actually I was sent an email by someone who basically said that there was a new grant opportunity for filmmakers out there who wanted to tell a story about the Italian experience or the Italian American experience. And, they were open to submissions. And this was being initiated by the National Italian American Foundation, which is NIAF, the Italian Sons and Daughters of America, and the Russo brothers, who are these very well-known Hollywood directors, and their father Basil Russo is on the board of National Italian American Foundation. So the three of them got together and formed this new grant program called the Russo Film Forum Grant Program, where they wanted to create stories, film stories about the Italian experience. So when I read this, I thought, well, who better than Ed Jackson? Ed and I kind of knew each other at that time and I would run into him at cultural centers, and I knew a little bit about him. I knew that he was someone who was not Italian, but who really embodied the Italian spirit, you know, and is really an example of someone who's bicultural and bilingual. So I filled in my application, sent it in, and kind of forgot about it. And then about maybe 3 months later, I got an email saying, "Congratulations, you've been selected as one of 8 filmmakers to receive this grant to to make your film." So they said, "Congratulations, go make your movie." So I hadn't told anyone about this application. So the first person that I thought of that I needed to notify was Ed Jackson himself. So I called him up and I said, "Ed, I have some news for you." And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well," I said, "I applied for this grant. I explained the whole story and I was chosen." And there was quiet at the other end of the call. And I said, "Well," I said, "Ed, look, if you prefer that we don't move forward with this, it's okay. I can notify NIAF and explain to them that you prefer not to do this." And his response was, "Are you kidding? You're making me an offer I can't refuse." So, um, so anyway, that's kind of the way it began. And then, of course, knowing Ed, I know that now when I got the application, that was in April of 2018, the finished film had to be delivered by September 1st. So I had really less than 6 months to make a completed film. So I knew that Ed goes to Italy every year. He spends the whole summer in Perugia. So I called him and I said, "Ed," I said, "are you going to Italy this year?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, when are you leaving?" And he said, "Well, the end of June." "When are you coming back?" He said, "Towards the end of August." I was like, "Oh, dear." I said, "I don't know how am I going to make this movie? He's going to be gone for most of the summer." So that's when I knew I had to follow Ed to Italy, to Perugia, and capture that part of his life there and meeting all the wonderful friends that he has there who equally love and adore him as they do here in New York. So, so when I came back, went to Perugia, came back, and that's when I dove into finishing this film because now I had like maybe a little over a month to actually finish editing the film, and so I finished it by the September 1st deadline. Then we were invited. Ed and I were invited to go to Washington D.C. because they had chosen 3 films from the 8 original films that they selected to invite to Washington, and then I ended up winning Best Film the night of the big gala dinner in Washington D.C. So it's been an amazing journey because ever since that night, we've been in a number of film festivals. We've shown the film in a number of cultural centers. The response, the film went viral on the internet. Last year, well, 2019, I went to Italy and I was awarded Best Documentary, Best Director awards from Voce Spettacolo Film Festival in Matera, my hometown where I was born. And in Florence, the film was shown at the Uffizi Gallery, which both my film, Il Signor Jackson, and another film I made on my father called Umberto E., both those films were shown in Matera and in Florence at the Uffizi. So I said, if I never make another film again, I can die and go to heaven knowing that my films were shown at the Uffizi Gallery, the heart of the Renaissance, the heart of the most artistic city in the world. So that was a high, very humbling honor for me to go through that. And we're still showing the film. And here we are today, with the Power Hour discussing the film and Ed Jackson, who you'll hear in a moment. So that's kind of the backstory of how, we in terms of the history of how the film came to be. I can't hear. Susan, I don't know if you're speaking.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
I
there
didn't
we
know you
go.
were finished. Sorry. I didn't know you were.
I can't
Okay,
see you.
so
There you now. Now I
okay,
see.
now I'm put it. Yeah, I always turn my video off because I want to make sure the connection is clear for the speakers.
Okay.
So that's wonderful how it all came to be. Um, and sometimes I always find like fate, there's always a reason for everything. And I'm so glad you did it because I feel that I got so much joy from hearing about your story, Edward. And like I said, to share it with everyone in there. When I know Anton and I, when we were doing the test run last week, there's so many different elements to this story. And Edward is very modest and humble, so I don't think he realizes uh, the example that he set for so many people, with his determination, and just acceptance, which I think has a lot to do with the story. So
I
yeah, go
just
Anton.
to add just to add to what you're saying, Sue, and Ed is going to speak in a few moments, but
Right.
I in a time where our country is so divided, Ed Jackson's story is one of community, is of inclusion. It's and Ed at a very young age, when his family moved to this predominantly Italian American neighborhood, he was embraced by this community, and he and his family embraced the new community that he now was a part of. And so Ed was taught this beautiful language and this culture at such a young age that it exposed him to this new world that he was a part of now. And I know I speak for Ed too, that we hope that this film, and because of the COVID, a lot of screenings that we had scheduled for last year were
Mhm.
postponed, obviously. But part of the screening events that we were supposed to do was to connect with young people, because young people need to see this film to understand that, Ed by Ed examples of how he was determined despite all the hardships, the racism that he felt at times, the challenges of life that life presents us at times. But his love of the language, of the culture, and his ability to find una strada in Italian, a road, a way to fulfilling his dream of becoming a teacher of Italian, is magnificent. And I think young people need to be exposed to someone like Ed and through this film. And I hope to do that more in this coming year.
Well, I'm hoping even through the university, we are going to share this recording with everybody on our YouTube channel and certainly show it with, our professor of Italian studies and other, other groups as well. So hopefully our students will be able to get a chance to, you
I
know,
just want just one more thing,
learn
just to,
about Edward. Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
not
because I'd
it's
love
not
for Edward to get on. Yeah.
it's not an Italian, it's not only limited to Italian.
Oh, no, no, no.
This
I
is a
totally
human
agree.
story. This is a
Yes.
story about, accepting all cultures from an
Hmm.
early age while finding one's path. You know?
Oh,
So
no,
it's
definitely.
it's a human story.
Without, it is totally. So
But
Edward,
I want to
yeah,
introduce Ed Jackson.
yes,
Ed
we want to hear
Jackson.
from Edward. We want to hear this great
There you go.
story. We're keeping everyone in suspense.
No, you're doing a fine job. I don't want to
Are
interrupt
we?
that. I mean, it's excellent. The dialogue is wonderful. It's on the money, and you're saying everything that I could possibly say. But I want to thank Anton Evangelista for his insight in seeing what accomplishments I made, and also giving recognition to the neighborhood, because it's all about the neighborhood and my being embraced by the neighborhood and growing up. And if somebody says, if people just said to me when I used to speak Italian, a dialect really, before I studied the language, you speak Italian? And I would say, I'm from the neighborhood. And it would be this amazing on their face. But it was just a wonderful period of time of growing up. And I parallel my growing up with the Little Rascals and the East Side Kids when they grew up. I mean, if you saw them on YouTube, the Little Rascals, and I didn't make the connection when I was growing up because I would look at on Saturdays afternoons. I would look at the Little Rascals and see what was going on with Alfalfa and Spanky and Darlene with the patch on his eye. I didn't even make the connection between just going across the street from my neighborhood and hanging out at the candy store with the boys and one girl. I mean, it was just, I just took it all for granted. And when the film was made, and I looked at from the outside looking in, I said, whoa, I mean, this was really, I was really fortunate.
So tell us, how did it all start? Tell us a little bit about, a little more details, what was really highlighted in the documentary about, your experience. Just how old were you when you first moved into the neighborhood? It was an all Italian neighborhood, correct?
Yes, it was basically an Italian-speaking neighborhood from my neighbors next door. The question when I saw the film was how I grew up on 129th Street between Madison and 7th Avenue in Harlem in the tenement, and I've always tried to figure out how my parents were able to buy this four-family house. Now I'm talking about the 1950s. To buy a four-family house in this predominantly Italian-American neighborhood. And, I didn't hear anything. It was just a normal neighborhood. So I remember my family moving and going over the 3rd Avenue, the 3rd Avenue Street Bridge, heading into the Bronx from Manhattan, and going to this four-family house and going to school and then meeting I was playing on the sidewalk in front of the house in itself, and the other youngsters in the neighborhood would come down and we would play box ball, stick ball, stoop ball together, and it was no big deal. And also, I was given a job when I was a youngster. The grocer, Paul, who was a Jewish gentleman, asked my mother if I could come in and work for him and putting bottles in these wooden crates that I'll call them, they're plastic, wooden crates, the empty bottles that people would bring back for the 2-cent deposit. Mm-hmm. So I was employed. So all of this seemed normal. I mean, it was just a normal situation. And I met friends, boys on the block. And we played what we call street games, box ball, stick ball, those kinds of things in the neighborhood in itself. And then as we grew older, we started to move towards the candy store, and that was our hangout. So there was a triad. So we'd come from home, go to the candy store, stay there a while, go to school, come back, and then and then go have supper, and then come back. So our meeting place was always the candy store.
That was the central spot, right?
That was our central spot. When we started dating, we'd come out of our homes. We'd stop at the candy store first, and then from there we go on the date. So they were driving, and I wasn't driving, but they were driving. And then they would come back before they went with their date. They would come back to the candy store. We're standing outside, and then they would go off to.
And what school did you go to when you were there?
You talk about the elementary school, junior high school, and high school, or which school?
Yeah. How old were you when you first moved into the neighborhood?
I was about 5 years old.
Oh, okay. So you were very young.
Yeah, I was very young when I moved.
And the elementary school that you attended was public school that you attended?
Yeah, public school 7-7 on Ward and 172nd Street.
And how
Still there.
diverse was the school at the time?
Well, everybody looked like a kid to me, but it was diverse. Yeah, it was very diverse.
I
Yeah,
love
you
that.
know, I mean, how many kids,
Right,
these kids, we didn't play with girls, but, but that was
right.
just a hormone thing. But yeah, it was very diverse. Yeah, yeah. Pier 77 on Mars Avenue, Warden Mars
Hmm.
and it's still serving the community itself. And the community residents have gotten larger, so they put a little school out in the schoolyard where we used to play, street games and go out and exercise.
Right, right.
Right.
And where did the fascination of Italians first start? Was it at that age, or it was it was gradual?
Well, it's like anything else. I mean, if you go fishing and in a lake, then go fishing. So I didn't know these individuals were Italians. They were just kids on the block. And what happened is we had these big squares on the block in itself. And I would play, football, like a little Spalding, as I said, in bouncing. Eric was one of the kids that I first met, came down and said, can I play with you? And I said, yeah. So I moved over, as I said in the film. And we throw the ball back and forth. He would stand to the side, and I would throw the ball. It would go up, and then he would catch it. And as long as he catch it, then we change sides. If he missed it, then I keep serving until he missed. And then we used to play spin the top. You had a guy coming around with a Dunkin' yo-yo, not donuts. This is before that. He used to show us how to do tricks of walking the dog and spinning the Dunkin' yo-yo kind of thing. All simple kinds of games, and it was a wonderful period of time.
Can I just
Yeah, sure, jump in. Hmm.
that what I always like to say is that while these children were playing, just playing as children should play,
Right. Hmm.
the Italian mothers in that neighborhood embraced Eddie like as one of their own, one of their own. So it really is a testament to the mothers in the neighborhood, and probably they were first generation Italian mothers,
Right.
who spoke Italian in their homes, and when they saw Eddie, they embraced him as one of so a lot of Eddie's influence was also in terms of the initial learning the dialect.
Right. That's what I was just going to ask. I was going
Came
to
from
say, what about the kids? Did they speak English, or were they bilingual with Italian and I guess
No,
talking to
no,
their mothers in
no.
Italian, or were they English speaking?
Well, my situation in the beginning was that my next door neighbor, who was from Napoli, from Naples, she would call me over as a little young boy, 5, 6 years old, and she would sit me on the porch, and she would say these Italian words to me. Now, in those days, children were seen and not heard. So, so I didn't want to be rude, because we get back to our mother and I get a whack. And the neighbors, if they were around, they were family, and we get a whack from them. So when they would sit me down as a 5 or 6 year old, and they would say "forchetta," and I would try and pronounce these words: cucchiaio, fork, spoon, coltello, a knife. Just just because I was an obedient child, and then after that, they would just send me off to play with my friends, and that was it. And so I grew up with the languages at an early age. So there was no stigma. I didn't know what Italian was. I mean, it just this was the neighbors, and this is what they taught me to do and say, and that's what I did. And then as I was growing up in the candy store, that's where we all started to congregate. So I would use some Italian word that isaka. Well, this is dialect, and that would be
That's cute.
isaka is what means questa car, which means this here. So we're talking about a bicycle or this there. So I would use the language because I can use the language. I didn't see anything in the future in it, but I would just use the language because that was part of what made the neighborhood what it was.
Did you start to realize, though, as you were immersed in this Italian culture, that it was starting to catch on for you? That you,
No,
because I
it was
know
normal.
even with my grandmother, sometimes I say words and I'm saying, how did I know that word? And it was because I heard it all the time when I was younger, that it just became part of my language. But I did realize, like, you know, at a young age, you're like a sponge. You absorb everything,
Right.
and you don't realize the influence that it has on you. So when you got older, did you start to realize what was happening? You know, just being surrounded by so many Italians, they were starting to grow on you.
Uh, well, oh, you're always influenced by your environment anyway.
Right, right.
These were Americans of Italian descent, and it was about Americanism back then, as I think about it. And it wasn't brought up about, you know, being Italian with the Careys and the Zinnas and the Butricos. It was just families in itself. It wasn't, you know, a kind of well, living in an Italian neighborhood, you're an African American family that's living in an Italian neighborhood. That was never discussed. That came out later, and when people said you grew up in an Italian neighborhood. Because as I said before, I would say certain words in Italian that I knew, and dialect. And they said, well, how'd you learn that? And I said, I'm from the neighborhood, and yeah, which means, you know, from the Italian neighborhood. And so that was just all part of it. And then I went through a period where I was reading about. I couldn't understand what was going on with the civil rights movement because I went to a junior high school, not middle school, but junior high school, 123 Bruckner Boulevard in Bronx, where it was a conglomeration of different ethnic students per se, and you know, for me, it was in the 3 years that I was there, 9th, 10th, and the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. I never saw a physical altercation. Imagine that. Never a physical altercation in school.
And what was the time period?
This was between, I graduated in 63 from a junior high school. So 1960 to 1963.
That was
In that
the
public
heart of
junior high
it,
school.
the heart of the movement, wouldn't you say? Interesting.
Yeah, well, that was their movement. That wasn't my reality.
Right,
At all.
right.
So, I mean, there was it was fun going to school. I mean, there was just there wasn't. As I said, there was never a physical altercation. Now there were projects over Bruckner Boulevard there that and low cost housing. I don't know it now. I didn't know what low cost housing was then, but as I grew up and learned as an adult, you know, about the housing there, the low income housing, you know, across the highway there in Sound, I think it was Sound View, but that didn't really make a difference to me at all. It was a great 3 years, and I decided that since my father said that I wasn't going to go to college, I decided that I was going to learn a trade, and I learned how to fix radios and televisions. And in 1967, during the middle of the civil rights movement, you know, I went for an interview in Long Island City to be a technician in this company. And I had an interview and I was hired in 1967. It was just, I mean, it was, and as I said, I couldn't figure out what the issues were with this. I just couldn't understand it. It didn't touch me. It was like I was in a bubble.
You know, can I just add that it's what I was saying earlier about what children are exposed to, you know.
Right.
So in Edward's case, he was exposed to just a normal
Right.
community that
No,
people
that's
knew each
great.
other.
I know, it's
So,
wonderful. Mm-hmm.
so I think, you know, we're bombarded with so many images of divisiveness, or this way, you should
Right.
think this way, you should be
Right.
that way, you should be this way. But there's other, you know, other opportunities for people to be aware of. It's kind of like, it's almost like a campfire. So if you see like maybe 3 campfires, and one is about anger, and another one is about hate, and another one is about friendship. It's which of the campfires are you going to become a part of, and which one are you going to add wood to?
Mm-hmm.
And so with Ed's case, it was like his parents brought him into a community to better them and to be exposed to a more sane or a better life, what we call a better life. And he was very fortunate that way, you know. But I think, you know, the young people need to be aware that there's other options out there. You know, they just need to be exposed. They need a chance.
Yeah, and with me, there was no pointing out of my ethnicity. That's the important
Right.
thing.
Everybody was colorblind.
Yeah, everybody was
colorblind,
colorblind
right.
then. There was just no issue at all.
That's
It's
great.
different today, but it was a whole different era.
Mm.
Yeah, a whole
That's
different era.
wonderful.
Yeah, nobody. And when all right, when we started going out and going to dancing in clubs, in Throg's Neck, for example, I was just trying to think of the names of the club. But anyway, we used to go dancing. Your friends had cars and they would drive, and we go. Well, there wasn't disco then, but it was just dancing to band. They had live bands there, and I was the only black patron there.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares. With my friends, you know, there was no issue. Then we went to New Rochelle and to the second floor, you know, dancing. That was the disco room. It was just, it was, you know, there's in this big hotel,
Right.
In White Plains, that had you know, these dances. I think it was the Palace or the Palisadium, but the Palisadium. Yeah, and it was just usually I was just, you know, the only person of color there, and you know, girls would come up to me and ask me to dance. And with my boys, I couldn't tell them no because they may think I'm funny.
Well, you know, this is a testament to Ed's, you know,
Right. But the
modesty, his
dances weren't
modesty.
that the dances weren't that segregated though, right? Right. No, you know what I'm saying? It's like Edward was saying, Edward, you were saying that.
I'm saying
You
that
understand what I'm saying? Like, right.
Yeah, the dances, they were in these clubs, and they were open to everybody. And it just so that we used to like listen, because we used to just listen to it. We used to have like a music box, and we used to put on the hood of a car in the summertime, and we would play things like Dancing in the Streets, with Mark up in the Vandellas, and all of this music that was going on. I was in WMCA, Good Guys, that's us. So we were just, that was just part of us, and going dancing. And when I went and sitting in the booth with my friends from the neighborhood, these girls would come up to me and ask me to dance. Sorry, guys, I started saying no. And I would be dancing all night with all these girls. I'm the only person of color that were in there. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, yeah, it was, but it wasn't an issue to me. It was just normal. And as I said, you know, I would dance the whole night away. And this was in New Rochelle and in White Plains, in Iran. It was
And when you said you were in TV repair, then how did you segue over to becoming a teacher?
Oh, well, that's the American idea. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, my father said, for whatever reason, my father grew up in the segregated South, and my mother also. So they had those things that they were doing. So, and I was completely on the side of that. I had no experience. So, what I decided to do was, and I was always industrious because, as I said, as a child, the grocer, who was a Jewish guy, Paul, asked my mother if I can come and put the empty bottles in crates just across the street. He would cross me back across the street. And so I was always working. And when I went to high school and I learned about electronics and I went for a job and I was hired just and as I said in the middle of the civil rights thing. So all of these things I just couldn't understand what was going on. And then I had an opportunity in 19. Let's see, it was the mayor of New York City, John B. Lindsay, opened up the city universities for anybody with a high school diploma. Prior to that, there were 4 types of diplomas. They had the academic diploma, they had the commercial diploma for girls that were going out into secretaries and working offices. Then you had the vocational diploma, which I have now from Samuel Gompers High School. I studied reading and television, and then they just had a certificate of dependence. And coming out of high school in 1967, I had a job. I had a job. I mean, I'm making a living. So nothing really changed. I didn't run into any kind of a real situation until I graduated from college, and I wanted to give back to the Italian American community. By that time, I was bilingual in Italian. I wanted to help in a bilingual fashion immigrants, helping them to acclimate themselves to America, using the language that they understood to help them get an idea. And my biggest opponents were individuals that just really resented me speaking Italian. It was just, if this was the turn of the 20th century, I would have been. They would have thrown a rope on a tree and just got rid of that aberration to them. It was really. I mean, even in the school system, when I had a license from New York State as teacher of Italian, and from New York City, and I was sending my resume. And my last name is Jackson, so either I had to be a slave or a slave owner. And they would call, and my resume was strong enough, they would call me to the interview, a teacher of Italian. And when they saw me, everything turned. I mean, it was just, that's when I really ran into the face of racism.
Because you didn't have an Italian name.
No, because when they saw me, because they look at Jackson.
I see what you're saying. Right.
Yeah, right. You see the resume first. You see what credentials I have in terms of what I studied, what I did, and what kind of work I was doing. So that's the resume. All right. So you needed, an Italian teacher, and so I was called in with other people. And when they saw me, I could just see in the face. No.
Right. That this is not.
It was clear.
So how did you break that barrier?
Well, I basically. What I couldn't do in the public schools because of the issues there. So I worked as an adjunct professor, and I taught in college, and that's where I really grounded myself. I taught at Purchase College and several other colleges. I was a teacher of Italian, and that's it. And as far as the public schools were concerned, even though I had the license, I took a test. I mean,
right.
I don't know if you give out licenses now, but back then, you take a license, and in any field, you want to be an English teacher, social studies. If New York City Public Schools, you give a license,
right,
or either state certification. My state certification was given. I took the license, because I wanted to take what I thought the license meant more than state certification. And so I took that first, and then I was grandfathered state certification later on. I didn't ever, because I had a license.
Right.
But yeah, that was my legacy. But
And how many years did you teach the bilingual class?
Well, how I made my career in New York City public schools, teaching English as a second language, because when I went on to Hunter College to major in Italian, I had a degree in Italian. I went back to see my professor Stabile, my Italian teacher, and told him that I wanted to major in, and this is a junior college, so that was the camaraderie between the professors and the students were very, very strong, as opposed to a four-year college. It's a junior college, and a four-year college. And I went back to him and said to him that I wanted, and I told him Italian. I was completely bilingual coming out of that program. And I said to him in Italian that I wanted to make my major Italian at Hunter College. And he said to me, he told me, Italian, you're going to run into a lot of problems. I said, okay. I said, what? I mean, there was no opposition. There was no wind. I mean, the sun is shining. So he says, you're going to have a problem. And because my undergraduate degree is in language and literature. He said, do your master's. That's a stabile, not stabile. Stabile. The point. He said, you're going to have a problem when teaching Italian in the real world. So what you should do is study English as a second language. I think that he would have done that if he had that.
Right.
To study English as a second language, to get to teach Italian, but through a back door. That's what he said. And he saved me about 13 years getting into Italian. Yeah, well, no, really. Going out with a PA and a master's in Italian, and running into all these obstacles. So I would have had to double back, get the ESL license, because I'm a linguist, so I like languages, and then go into the only way that you can ask, well, did you ever teach Italian? Yes, I absolutely did. There used to be in the New York Times advertisements for language teachers, and I taught Italian once a week in a continuing education program, and these were adults. Nobody died. Nobody dropped dead. Nobody was angry. I did it for, I think, about 6 to 10 years on Saturday. Yeah, right. But the New York City public schools, I mean, it was just, it was almost as if by speaking Italian, being bilingual and bicultural, it almost made me human. So that was something that certain individuals did not want to see. There were individuals that resented me speaking Italian. They didn't speak Italian, but just the question was, well, who are you to sound like my grandfather? Who are you to sound like somebody in the neighborhood? 187th Street. Because when I went to 187th Street, I only spoke Italian. Casa del Disco. When
Really?
That's where I used to get the Italian music. When I never went to 187th Street. The only time I went to 187th Street because I was the treasurer of the Italian club at Bronx Community College. Well,
I love it. That's great.
This is an American story. I mean,
I love it.
I was asked to join, and if you saw my film, that young lady, Rose Parlow, I met her in one of my classes. She said, "Come in and meet me here." And it was in a lounge area where they had different clubs. I don't know if they have them now, but they had the biology club, the philosophy club, and there was the Italian club. And I came, and so it's all hired, and I met everybody there. And they asked me to join the Italian club. I said, well, I'm not Italian. They said, no, you don't. You're going to the school. You can't make this up. And so I joined.
You probably spoke Italian better than the Italians.
well, if you compare it with dialect, you're right.
Right, of course.
You know, Susan, when I first met Edward, the first two times that I met him, I thought he was a transplant. I thought he was from Italy. Then it wasn't until one night, I don't remember what occasion it was, that I heard him speak English for the first time. And I said, oh, you're American.
American.
Yeah. Oh, where are you from?
That's so funny.
Bronx. I said, I'm from the Bronx too. And so that added a whole new weight to the friendship that we later formed.
No, it's funny you should say that, because when I met you over the summer, Edward, I knew a little bit about your story, but I agree with Anton. When you showed up, you were speaking Italian fluently. And when I was describing you to my team, I actually said that. I was like, when he showed up, you would have thought this was somebody who was born and raised in Italy. I was like, he's really Italian, like not just someone who happens to speak Italian. I was like, he really is truly Italian. You know, it's amazing.
We all have our problems. But as I said, I'm from a neighborhood. I mean, really, I mean, you know, when I used to go to clubs that had only Italian music there, and in Brooklyn on 18th Avenue, for example. When I went to 18th, I heard about 18th Avenue. Let's go back. On Saturdays, they used to have Italian language programs and played Italian music. And I'd never been to Brooklyn, except for when I went to the Nevins Street to the, used to have these different stars going to play on stage.
Right.
But anyway, so I heard about listening to Italian music on Saturday mornings. And I heard about this place called Bensonhurst in Brooklyn. And they said, you know, and they're speaking Italian, talking about all kinds of food, and they talked about a club to go dancing in. So I took a ride out there during the day, and I went to Cafe Italia. I drove out there during the day, on Saturday, I think it was. And I walked into the cafe, and the guy behind the counter said to me, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Mi fate il caffè, corto nero caldo, put it on his head." So he says, "You speak Italian?" He said in Italian. "You speak Italian?" I said, "Yeah, I'm from the Bronx." I said, so he made my call. He made my call.
I love it.
And he put
I
me
love
on
that he
his
says, I'm from the Bronx, I speak Italian. I love it.
Well, you know, I want to make sure everyone understood me. You know. And so he says to me, and this was Cafe Italia, which is still there. And
really?
He said, yeah, it's still there on 18th Avenue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but the dance is not there anymore. But they play cards back there now. But next to the bar, he told me when I was having the espresso, he told me in Italian, he's saying that on Friday and Saturday and Sunday nights, they have dances there with Italian music. You know, nice. I said, oh, really? And so that following Saturday night, I think I went there on Wednesday or Thursday. I just drive out to see the neighborhood. And so I went in, and people were online. So to go in, they had to pay some kind of fee. And I said, "Buonasera," and I never paid a dime to get in. Well, I used to walk around the line and walk inside. I mean, it was just, it was the wildest. I mean, I took it all for granted. You know, I mean, it was just, and
right.
I spent many years out there.
That's nice. So we're getting close to time, and I want to get some questions in. Tell us a little bit about how you, have all of these friends now in Perugia. Tell them a little bit of the story of what brought you to Perugia, Italy.
Well, I was trying to become an Italian teacher, and it just wasn't happening. I had, and Anton pointed this out, that I thought all the Italians were here. Italy was a little not on the map somewhere. I mean, everything I did, food, dancing, socializing,
Right.
it was all, right, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So then I couldn't do what I wanted here in teaching Italian. So I decided to go to Italy. And and I decided to go to Italy because I said, all right, I'll go to Italy to study medicine, to become a doctor, and then basically an anesthesiologist. And then what I would do is I would be bilingual and be able to help patients in understanding the message in itself. And there was an advertisement in the New York Times when it was a paper version called The Weekend Review, and I saw this advertisement, study Italian in Perugia. That's how I learned about Perugia as opposed to the old farms. And I had no obligation, and I said to myself, "Well, I'm going to go to Italy." And this was, and I was in Italy for a year, from 1980 to 1981, September 15th, September.
Nice.
Yeah, I just picked up and left. I mean, it was just,
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because how could I? It's just like I couldn't do what I wanted here. So I said, well, maybe I get some papers for this, because it's always be all you can. I mean, if it's one thing if you say, well, you don't speak the language, you don't know the grammar, you sound like a gringo, io parlo Italiano. I mean, I can fix those things. But just to be rejected, just on my ethnicity, that really bummed me out. I mean, because I never had that happen to me before, and so I went to Italy and to get some paper from Italy, and I made so many friends there because I'm American, and the Italians could communicate with me. I mean, I had to stop myself from partying because it was wonderful.
That's great.
I made so many friends, went to so many weddings. I mean, I was out dancing on the weekends. I mean,
Wow.
I can attest that Eddie is a party animal.
All right. I knew see, there was another reason why I liked you, Edward. I'm a party girl, so that's it.
Oh, all right. Well, listen.
So let me ask you, just listening to your story this whole time, it was just every part of it seems like the Italian influence was there, like every step of the way, and got
absolutely.
you all the way to Italy, right?
Yeah.
And now you have all these Italian friends, and that's great. So what, like, in looking back, how do you feel like if you would have stayed in Harlem as opposed to moving to the Bronx? Do you feel like that move that your dad did, which was amazing, worked so hard, and was able to afford this wonderful house in a different type of neighborhood and all of that? Do you feel really that was the determination for your entire life? Do you feel like that one changed everything? Or also, was it because of you as well that you embraced a different culture?
Honestly, I'm only human. Okay? I am a product of my environment. A negative environment, unless a person has a guide, that person takes on that negative environment. Positive environment, every person becomes someone who is
So true.
Right. And for me, at a certain point, I started to read about my African heritage, right? Because I had no exposure to it except for George Washington Carver with the beans and all that. I knew nothing about.
Have you done the Ancestry.com at all? Have you
Well,
done
I'm talking about the African American experience.
Okay.
I haven't done.
You haven't
You know,
researched your background. Okay.
I haven't done that yet.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, but Bill Gates, I mean, yeah, he does that. But anyway, I watch it all the time. But anyway, I said to myself, and in looking at the civil rights movement at a certain point, I said to myself that I'm going to have some problems. So I'm going to do something that will make it irrefutable that I am not inherently intellectually inferior. So I'm going to become bilingual in Italian. That was a conscious effort. Because I was invited into the Italian club in itself, and then I took the language and I said this will be my way to more of American experience as opposed to being segregated or going into segregation based on lack of income and opportunity. And so so I embraced that in myself, and I became bilingual here, but I couldn't do anything with my language because normally the Americans of Italian descent don't speak the language. You hear them say, "I'm Italian." Okay, well, if you don't say "sono italiano" or "sono italiana," you're not Italian. Because if you say that to an Italian, "I'm Italian." Come in,
Right.
What are you talking about? So that's all esoteric in
right.
the United States. But that's all well and good. So what I consider to be Italian is those individuals that promote the Italian culture through the language. That's not with food consumption. That's the whole gamut in itself. So if you can't say io sono italiano or io sono italiana, your origins are of Italian. You're an American of Italian descent, but you're Americanized because those individuals that you say you are, you can't communicate with them unless they know your language. And so that's the conclusion that I come to.
Right. So education is very important, right?
Yeah, education is all, but even if you speak dialect, you said, venuta, even if you speak the dialect, well, that's part of the culture itself. It's just like Ebonics in English. But the idea is that language is part of culture, and that's shaped the individuals. So when I would go to 187th Street or go to a dance that was in Italian, I'd only speak Italian. Not an issue.
Right.
Not an issue. Except for those people that were there that didn't speak Italian.
Right.
Right. So it was.
Well, that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah, so.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's certainly an interesting one, and
it's American. It's an American story.
That's good. I like it. It is an American story. I like that.
Because kids come together and they play together and they exchange things.
Can I?
So true.
Can I just...
Yeah, Anton. Yeah, and then after that, I'd like to see if anyone has any questions for you and Edward.
I want to invite everyone who is with us today that if you want to get in touch with me and join my mailing list, because I don't sell email lists, I promise. It's just to keep everyone updated with my progress, with our progress with the film, and I'll keep you informed for any future reference. So the website is comprehensivefilms.com, or my email is moviesbyanton@gmail.com.
Well, we'll send a follow-up email, and we'll put that all in the email so everyone has it. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the invitation. That's wonderful. Does anyone have any questions right now for Anton and Edward? Let's see. I do. I see questions here. Okay, so one question. Well, here it says, congratulations on this wonderfully poignant film, Il Signor Jackson. We will be able to see the film you made about your, oh, will we be able to see the film you made about your dad? This is for Anton.
Oh, yes. Again, on my website, what I'm working on now is a new website which will have all my films available. That's why if you join my email list, I'll keep you informed when it's ready. Because a lot of people ask me about other films I've made. So I'm kind of bringing them all together. And it'll be under my name, AntonEvangelista.com. That's the new website, AntonEvangelista.com.
Okay, good. All right, good.
Yeah.
This is a great, I love this. This is actually a comment. It says, Edward is truly more Italian than any of us. He
They always
talks
say
with his,
that.
wait, it's that, this is the best one. He talks with his hands more than any Italian grandmother. I love that. Thank you, Marcel.
Thank you.
I love that. That's great. Does anyone else have any more questions?
There was a question by Maurice, I believe.
Oh, I didn't see that one. Do you see
Yeah.
it? In your, you can read it. I don't see
Uh,
that one.
I mean, it appeared before. I don't know how to pop up the question, but
It
If you go in the
says,
three dots, do
mhm.
you see it, Sue? Because
Yes,
I
it
don't
says
see it for some
in
reason.
in the documentary you mentioned your mom said you can do nothing wrong, and your dad gave you
Oh,
impressions that you could do nothing right. Can you expound on their experience with the new neighborhood?
yeah, yeah. Um, my parents grew up in the segregated South, and they moved north with migration in the 1930s. And to this day, I don't know how my parents were able to buy that poor in which we occupied one unit, and the other two units were rented out by my parents. Um, and it all worked out, but it's just that it was. I think it was the right time and the right place, to tell you the truth. Because it just seemed doesn't happen for whatever reason. Did I address the question?
Yeah, was that? Let's see if they respond. Well, I hope we answered your question. I thought it was a good one. I have another person that also she said, yeah, they said yes. They did. They said thank you. I have someone else who also taking notes throughout the documentary and said they noticed your hand gestures. But you know, we're known for that, right? And
Yeah.
and here, you know, you weren't brought up Italian, but essentially you were. That's how much they influenced you, that you even have all the mannerisms too, not only the language. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, but don't forget, I'm from the neighborhood.
That's right.
right.
Yep.
That's it. That says it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Anything you would like to share before we close our talk, Anton, about you know, the experience and kind of your observations with the documentary as you were learning more about Edward's life?
You know, I hope that that again people get a chance to see the film. Tell your friends about the film. Let them see it. The film is free. It's available on Vimeo.com. You know, I hope also to make a feature film, a dramatic film on my father's story too, because my father's story is also very inspiring. Umberto E. You know, it has all the classic elements of a great Italian European film in the style of Cinema Paradiso or Malena or all the neo-realist films of the 50s. It has a lot of those elements because my father had a tough childhood, and his story is really a story of love and forgiveness as a form of revenge with love.
Well, we'll have to
So
bring you back. You'll have to come back and do another power
sure,
hour with us and
sure,
show
no
us that
problem.
film. We'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to
I
see it. It's
know,
very good.
really, Edward. I have to ask you a favor. We have, with our society members, we have a Globetrotter program, and we have gone to Italy. That was our first trip, and then we went to Portugal. But I know everybody's going to want to go back to Italy, especially once we can get through this pandemic. So if we take a trip over to Perugia, would you like to help us with some itineraries, and maybe you can tell us when you're visiting, and then we can go over there when you're there, and we can all have a great trip together. How's that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be
Really?
there before
Wonderful.
you. Because I'm
Okay, great.
gonna go this summer.
You were
And
telling me when you visit, though, I know you mentioned something about when you go over there, they have some big festival, which I was not
yeah,
aware of.
yeah,
What
that, that's
is that festival about?
it's for some crazy reason the Italians love jazz, and they have.
I do too. That's what it was.
Oh, you do?
It was jazz. Oh, I love jazz.
Well, have you ever heard of Umbria jazz?
What is it?
Umbria jazz.
No, I never did.
Umbria.
No.
Well, if you listen to WBGO,
I'll have to look it up.
Look it up. Look it up. If you listen to BGO, they have a jazz festival in Newport, Rhode Island, and the other one is in Umbria Jazz. And, and it's all outdoors, like what happened in the last summer. And it's 7 days, 9 days, sorry, 9 days, and I'm trying to think. 2019 was the last one that they had. Then they had the pandemic kind of thing like that. And I'm planning
Is
to.
it normally in? Did you say?
It's in July.
Okay, that's it. Perugia in July with Professor Jackson. That's it. This will make a great trip.
It's wonderful. I'll be your tour guide, and also
beautiful.
I will get you guys out. I will get you out to the hibachi factory where you can get those little
chocolates.
The chocolates. They're gonna have a tour there.
I love it.
And you can fill your pockets up with all the bachis.
I love it.
The Perugina chocolates are made in Perugia, obviously.
Right.
Yes,
yeah, they're delicious.
The factory is like a hop, skip, and a jump away from the downtown.
That's one town I've never visited in Italy, and I always wanted to go there. But then when you were talking about the jazz, really fun. So we'll have to set that up. Anyone interested in that trip, please let me know, and we'll put it together. And our guest speaker will be Professor Jackson, or a guest tour guide, I should say, will be Professor Jackson. We'll have to plan it around your trip. How's that?
Yeah. Okay. You can usually plan because.
Thank you, Marcel. He just gave us a link to the Umbria Jazz.
Oh,
we'll share that with the group. We'll share that in our email.
Oh, so all right. So there it goes. Does it tell? Give you a year on there? With the last one was 20.
I don't know. We'd have to look it up on the. I'd have to Google it.
Yeah. Okay. So
let's see when the last one was.
Somebody knows about it. It's usually the first 10 days in July.
First 10 days in July. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, it's called Umbria Jazz, and you can Google Google umbriajazz.com. It's been in Bronx since 1970.
Just so you know, Umbria is the region that Perugia is located in Italy. So Umbria is the whole region, you know. So that's why it's called Umbria Jazz Festival. Umbria Jazz Festival. Music Festival.
That's great. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it goes on from 12 to 1 for 10 days.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, 12, yes, for 10 days. It starts at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and you can eat out.
I was going to say, there has to be food involved, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's food involved. You got a stage outside that's set up, and they come on one after another from 12 to 1.
That's great.
So,
that's terrific.
Yeah, it's in right in the Giardini Carducci, the Carducci Gardens. It's just they set up a stage there, and the sky's above you, and the stars, and a big, beautiful moon, and
I'm just looking here.
it's wonderful. If you come to the city a day or two before to Perugia, a day or two before, it's a quiet little rustic town. But when Friday comes, the volume of tourists increase for 10 days, and then it disappears.
Yeah, I just see here July 9th through the 18th. Someone just wrote.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is? Oh, let me put
Yeah,
that down.
that's what they
Oh.
said, July 9th through the 18th.
Oh, so it came back. Oh. So,
I think, yeah, that's
oh,
someone wrote
tell them
down.
thank you.
Thank you, Marcel.
I don't know how they
Thank
felt
you.
about it. So July 9th. So
Well,
I'm gonna
great. So see, not only did you learn about Professor Jackson's life, but now we all know about jazz in Perugia. And we're all going in July. This is great. This is wonderful. See, this is why we call it Power Hour, Edward. See, we powered everybody up, and now
That's
we're
right.
all going to go on a trip to Italy. This is great.
Oh, well.
No, I'm serious. Don't ever, when I put my mind to something, hopefully July, everything will open up and we'll be able to travel to Europe again. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking at that myself now.
But anybody on the call, if you didn't get a chance to see the documentary, obviously, hopefully this was a teaser. You hear more about, and learn more about the film. And like I said, in the email that we'll be sending to you, we'll send all the information about jazz, the link to the documentary, and a link to Anton, and you can follow him and all his terrific films. So I thank both gentlemen for your time and sharing your stories. We're definitely going to share it to all our groups of students on campus. And I know I have a friend that was on the call and he wants to share it. He's actually he's in charge of the development over at St. Michael's in the Bronx, so he definitely wants to share it with the students over in that school as well.
What's his?
So
thank you.
His name is Robert Cody.
Robert Cody. Okay.
Yes, I'll put him in touch with you.
Excellent. Thank you.
And thank you. Thanks for everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation on such a crazy stormy day. But like I said, as I started, this is, two celebrations in February. And I think your story, Edward, really, brings it all together. So thank you. And thank you for everything that you do. And Anton too, for your expertise and creativity and making such a great film. We appreciate that. Thanks for sharing your talents.
Thank you, Susan, for inviting us and for allowing us to come on.
You're welcome.
And thank you to everyone. We can't see any of you, but we thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much. Have a great day. Everyone stay warm and safe.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.